Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Shit Moms Won't Say. Whether you know it or not, my guest tonight has probably made her way onto your bookshelves in some way, shape, or form, whether it is her beautiful writing, her incredible illustrations, or some combination of both. I promise you know who this woman is. You may most commonly know her from her hit book turned blockbuster movie, Boss Baby. But you may also know her, and this is blowing my mind, from illustrating, yes, Hillary Rodham Clinton's book, It Takes a Village. More importantly than that, though, she is the mommy to three grown adults and is almost a grandma. Thank you so much for being here, Marla Frazee. Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, thank you for coming on. Are you kidding? And look at your shirt. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Sadly, probably. Yeah, I'm sadly, this will probably air after the election. So you and I are either going to be cheering about this episode for years to come,
or not.
Dead? No, I don't know. We'll be sad or not.
Yes, we will.
We will. That's right. Put it into the universe. We will. We're manifesting goodness back into society as we sit here. That's what good people do. Okay, so before we get into Big Mom 3, I wanted to share something with you. So I always, I do a lot of research. I am a fan of yours. There's a book called Boot and Shoe that I love of yours. And you have this whole like farmer series also. It's Farmer and the Clown, and is it Farmer and the Monkey? Is that the other one?
Second book in the trilogy, and it just came out.
So you just have these great books. I know the book that influenced you in a real big way when you were younger is Where the Wild Things Are. And I love that book. And my daughter, who, again, this will air after it, but she is turning 1 on Sunday. So for reference, we're filming this on the 21st. There's no secrets here. She went as Max for her first Halloween.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
6 days old, and I ordered the costume from the hospital. I couldn't resist it. I always post a picture at the end of the episode. That will obviously be the picture, so watch all the way to the end because she's really cute.
I will.
Yeah,
I will see that. That is great.
One of the most influential books of all time, and that's sort of led you down your path. But we'll get there. Let's get into the Big Mom 3. So, first question of Big Mom 3: did you always know you wanted to be a mom?
I didn't really. I didn't think about it very much before I was a mom. I never thought like I don't want to be a mom, but it just wasn't a real big focus of mine.
I think more career.
Pardon me?
More like thinking career and then like.
I came from. I have a big Lebanese family. We're very, a lot of really strong maternal role models. Like wonderful, actually maternal role models. And I think it was harder to imagine having a career than it was to sort of become what was all around me, which is these wonderful women who had babies and kids. I've been thinking about that question because I don't remember ever really focusing on that until I did.
Yeah, until they were here. And so you have 3 kids. So give everyone the breakdown of your kids because they're a little bit older.
Yeah, they are. There are 3 grown sons, and my oldest is 32, married, about ready to have a baby, and my middle is turning 31 soon, and then my youngest is just 26. Wow. And they're amazing. They're amazing young men. I'm so lucky.
That's so cool. Marla and her boys. That's very, very cool.
And I had I thought it was really, really special and fun to have 3 sons, 3 boys. Yeah, it was awesome.
Are they very protective of you? Are you like their central focus of protection?
We have a really close relationship. I think they're so funny, so smart, so special. I miss them. I haven't, this is a year that, it's hard to see them.
That's the understatement of the century. It is difficult to see
And
people.
it's crazy, but they're busy in their lives, and we do what we can. But yeah, they're just really special, and it was a lot of fun to have boys.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
second question of the big mom three. What is the like shittiest or most backhanded piece of advice you've ever gotten from another mother or parent?
Or parent, that question, I've been ruminating on it, and kind of a few things started bubbling up, but one just kept standing out. It just kept, and it made me so mad all over again. So
Into a tailspin. I'm sorry.
yeah, it felt like, okay, this has to be what I talk about, because it just kept appearing again. But so one of my sons was in high school, but kind of pre-driving. He didn't have a car or anything at that point. So, and he was dating a girl that was a little older. So she came and picked him up, and they went to her family's house for the evening. And when he came back, I was kind of like, asking, well, what'd you guys all do? And who was there? Were her parents there? Or what, her sister, what was going on? And he sort of shared hesitantly that they weren't really in the house. I'm like, well, where were you? And they were in the back house. Apparently they were the back house, pretty far away from the main house.
Okay.
No one with, I'm like, really? Huh. Not cool. I'm thinking, okay, so the next day I call the parents, and the girl's dad answers, and I say, I didn't really realize that, there's this back house, and his response was, I remember, he's like, I trust my daughter. It's too bad you don't trust your son. And it was such a dereliction of parental duty in my mind. It was like such a swerve over to, it had nothing to do with trust. It had nothing to do with that. It was kind of like, how are we going to keep these two, safe and protected as much as possible? I mean, of course they're older, they're going to do a lot, but like, let's just work together is kind of what my feeling was. And it was just a blindsided, it really shocked me. I kept thinking about it with this question. It was like, yeah, I guess that's the thing. That was the shittiest one of all. And when there are like those teenage years are sort of tricky, when parents sort of adopt this, I'd rather, if they're going to do X, Y, or Z, they do it in our house than out in the world. It's like, and I always think that is a sort of a cover for, they want to be sort of the cool parent and the one, as opposed to a parent, so
there's a big difference between a cool parent and a good parent. And
right.
I'm sure I will personally struggle with it. I think my wife will struggle less with it. She'll be happy to be a good parent. I'd be like, but maybe just a bit. But you're right. And by the way, he was like 4 seconds away from like mansplaining to you why you should like not trust your own son.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'm sorry I brought that up, because now I feel gross about it. That's gonna stick with me. If a parent, I wouldn't even be able to handle that maturely. So like, I applaud you that you seem to have handled that maturely, because my response wouldn't have been nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he was angry with me, my son.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, the parent, whatever. But yeah, my son was. That happens.
Okay, third question of the Big Mom 3. What is a skill or like superpower you had before becoming a mom that you think has really helped you as a mom?
I don't know if it's a skill or a superpower. Maybe it's a trait.
Okay.
That I just have always questioned authority. Like I always have since I was a kid. And if somebody in authority is telling me something that doesn't make sense to me, I'm like, I don't know. And it really came in handy with, when you're a parent, you have a lot of, teachers or doctors or elders telling you.
People who think they're much, much smarter than you.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're weighing in on your kid, their opinion about your kid. And I think my sort of trait of questioning authority actually helped in a lot of instances for me to kind of really figure out if what this person was saying made sense for my kid. And in a couple instances, when I dug around a little bit, it was kind of like, no, that doesn't make sense for my kid. And I'm going to, sort of not do this recommended whatever it might be, and instead do something else. So, I mean, that was a helpful trait that just sort of comes somewhat naturally to me, maybe.
Yeah. I like that. That's actually so that's come up on the show a few times, and I've never had anybody phrase it in that way, like questioning authority. Like I've had people being like, trusting your mommy instinct and, not taking shit from people. And I think that that's really what it is that like natural tendency to be like, well, something's a little bit off, whatever it may be. So I like the phrasing of that, which makes sense because you're an author, so you probably have all kinds of good phrasing. Everybody else is like, it's me and I know my own mind and da 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 da. So thanks for putting into words for all of us, common people that can't. I appreciate it. So speaking of you being a writer, so you've done some really, really cool stuff, but you started off your career like in a corporate world, really to like end up, I think, where you are, right? Was that sort of the end game, was to start up? And I think, did you do like McDonald's artwork or something crazy? Like you did some weird stuff.
I did some weird stuff. I did a lot of weird stuff, but I wasn't ever really in the corporate world. I just was a freelance illustrator that got all kinds of different sorts of jobs. So a lot of them were advertising, and a lot of them were toys and games and things like that, or textbooks. I did a lot of things before I sort of broke into the fields of children's books.
What would you say is like your big break into children's books? Like what was the one?
It was a slow process. I wouldn't say there was like, oh, okay, I'm in. It was slow. I always knew from the time I got out of school that this is what I wanted to do, and I was trying to break in, and getting a lot of rejections, but still able to get illustration jobs. So I was, kind of making enough money to live on while I was trying to break in, and it got real frustrating. It was probably a good decade of not being able to break in. And then I finally got my first children's book, and I thought, great, I'm in now. I'm gonna just start. And it was 5 years between that and the second book. And those 5 years really were frustrating. I couldn't understand why it was taking so long. But when I finally got the second book, then it sort of started to, it was almost like I did a book one after another. And that coincided with having young children at home. So it actually worked out. Even if I would have loved my career before, doing all these other freelance jobs, I wouldn't have probably been able to continue doing it because the deadlines are really fast, and I didn't have, anybody watching really any kind of, organized way my kids when they were little. And so it was just harder to kind of be nimble about that. And I didn't want to do it anyway. So I sort of then just sort of relax into doing a book a year, which is about pretty much what I still do. And it worked for having little kids because, I would work when they napped, or when they started to go to preschool, I would work in those hours, or, and then when they were all in school, all for a school day, it's like, oh my gosh, I have all this time. So it wasn't like a big break. It really took a long time.
Hard work. What a concept.
Yeah. And always wanted to do this since I was a little kid. Like, so it wasn't, it's like I was just determined. There were years in there that I thought, well, maybe I don't know what I'm doing and I can't really do it. Maybe I'm not very good and maybe I'll never be able to break in. But, it was sort of a slow build.
Yeah.
And I really think that that's okay now that I'm on the other side of it. And I started to teach, when I started teaching children's book illustration, I taught for a lot of years. I've tried to shorten that time period for people. So it doesn't take them 10 years, but it takes them 14 weeks, to figure it out. Because I didn't really know what the problem was. Now I do. Looking back, I know. I wasn't telling stories with my pictures. I was sort of being more either decorative or trying to be kind of more commercial, maybe sort of splashy or whatever with my pictures. It wasn't like a writing process with my pictures. And I really needed to sort of settle down and get more personal about what it was I was doing in the illustrations in order to start getting published as an illustrator.
Well, you know what's cool about that? So, like I said this to you when we connected a few days ago. Like, what I think is really wonderful about your books is that you're a good writer, and I think sometimes children's books they're shit. They're terrible. Like some of them are terrible. Like I read some of these books to my daughter, and like they're not even slant rhymes, right? Like they're not even trying. They're like, look at this pup, and my name is Bup. Like they're teaching them nothing. So I think it's really cool that when you sort of embrace like, hey, I need a writing process. Like I need this to be like authentically me. That's when it started working. That's a cool story to tell. That's amazing. And then you've done some cool stuff. You did, and I gotta bring her up because I know you met her. She's on your website. You illustrated for my girlfriend? Is that what she is to me? No. Just someone I love very much. Hillary Rodham Clinton. I mean, you broke in a big way. I mean, so bravo. And what was that experience like for you? Was it just magical? Were you like, I've made it?
To illustrate Hillary's book.
Yeah. Still weeping about it? Like, I'm weeping for you, and I barely know you, and I definitely don't know Hillary.
I wanted to do that. So, I mean, I've been a Hillary, she's a hero to me and has been forever since I've been aware of her. And so, I was just thrilled to be part of that book.
Yeah.
And hoped, of course, that the outcome of it would have, it would have come out when she was president. She should be president. She's president. And yeah, it was quite an experience, and I got to meet her a few times within that process. Yeah. And she's just as amazing as I thought she would be. I was sort of deer in the headlights.
But her emails. Oh my God, please. No, that's so cool. And it's so nice to hear what a genuine person she is. Yeah. It's so cool. And then something else cool happened, right? And I think this is probably, so when I was talking to my co-producer, I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. She's coming on. I was like, she wrote Boss Baby. And my co-producer was like, that's one of my favorite movies. I was like, Christine, you're an adult. What are you talking about? She's like, no, it's really funny. I was like, no, I've seen it. It is really funny, and I've read the book. How did that happen? That all of a sudden you have this book, and it's a great little book, but then it becomes a blockbuster.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It really is. I did the book. I want to tell you how I even got the idea for the book.
Okay. I think it's meeting my child, or no? Oh, you haven't.
No. Okay, so my youngest son, he was 15 at the time, and he wanted a cat, and we never had a cat in our house. We had a dog, no cat, and but we gave him a kitten for Christmas, and he was like delighted, and this little kitten was crazy and was like pooping on the bed and in the fireplace and in the Christmas tree. You know, it was crazy because we didn't know anything about cats, and it was a kitten energy. And so, and our dog was just a little, like an older dog then, and a little freaked out by it.
Yeah, of course.
So my son came up to me and he was like kind of, you know, really sad and said, I know we have to go back to the cat adoption place and give the kitten back. I'm like, why? Why would we do that? Well, because he's stressing everybody out. And like, you know, I said, oh, we're not going to give him back. Like, this is sort of like, you should see what it was like to have you guys as babies. Like, that was stressed out. Like, we didn't give you back. Like, we'll keep this kitten and it's going to be part of our family. And I was thinking when I saw that, my son sort of really upset by this and feeling kind of like overwhelmed by this little creature, that's what I felt like when we had babies. That's what parents felt like. And it was like sort of seeing it sort of outside of myself, not my own experience with babies, but watching him with a cat that sort of gave me the idea to think about this book, Boss Baby. And so I started to write the text, the manuscript, and it was really funny to me. But when I started to draw it out, it just didn't work right away. It took a really, really long time to get it to work. And my editor kept saying, like, she thought the manuscript was really funny. I kept drawing it. And she'd be like, you know what? It's getting less and less funny. Like, every time you draw it, it's just not funny anymore. And I'm like, what is it that you, and she couldn't really tell me. And she said something, she said, I mean, we've worked together forever. We're really good friends, but she said, I don't care if I ever see this again at this point, which was horrible. So I thought, it still makes me laugh. I'm going to just secretly work on it. You know, I'm not going to tell her I'm working on it, but I'm just going to keep working on it. So I would sit in the corner of a coffee shop and like work on it. And I started to change the title. I changed it temporarily to The Little Fucker instead of Boss Baby. And I changed the wording. So, you know, from the moment, you know, however it started, the little, anyway, I changed the name. And so it said that on the cover, The Little Fucker, and then starring the little fucker as himself, and then just all the sketches. And it helped me kind of see this guy as, you know, like, it needed more of an edge. It was a weird line to fall on, like, in terms of, he had to be a baby and sort of cute, but he also had to be a little fucker, you know?
I love it.
And so people would see me sometimes. I'd be in this coffee place and, you know, in the corner, and they'd be like, look, honey, there's Marla. Didn't she come to your school? And, you know, and I'd have to like hide it because it's like, oh, anyway. And then when I showed it to my editor, you know, when I had sort of finished that little sketch dummy, she was like, oh, we're doing it. Of course, we changed the name. And then, so that was the book. When it came out, even maybe before it actually was published, so it was sort of at a book fair, and somebody from DreamWorks, who, you know, is in development, saw it and wanted to option it. And that's how it became a film. And I was like, you're kidding, that's incredible news. But I also knew a lot of people have their books optioned and it doesn't really ever, you know, happen, that the film is actually made. In the case of the Boss Baby, it just kept getting green, you know, all the way through the process. And then it came out, and it was so fun. It took, you know, years, of course, as animation does, to actually have it come out. So I think it was optioned around 2011, I want to say, and it came out in 2017, the film. I'm pretty sure those are the dates. So, and it was right after Trump won when the film came out. And of course, Alec Baldwin was the voice of the Boss Baby and also impersonating Trump on Saturday Night Live. And it was just this sort of synergy of, it was so weird that it all kind of happened the way it did. But
I love it. I love that you illustrated for Hillary. You wrote a book about a boss baby right after the biggest boss baby in the world won. And Alex Baldwin voiced it. It's like, literally couldn't write it better, right? Write out this scenario, it's perfect.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
That's awesome. So you have, I mean, you have 30 plus books. Do you have a favorite?
One of the books I did was about my son and my editor's son together. It's called A Couple of Boys Have the Best Week Ever, and it uses their names, and it uses my editor's parents, and it came from a personal story, and so it feels sort of, that's a very personal book, and it won a pretty cool award. It won a Caldecott Honor Award, and so we all celebrated as a group, and that was pretty special. But I usually really love the book I'm working on. I mean, it takes so long to do one that I have to be super excited about it, and
Yeah.
I mean, it should be my favorite book. Like the one I'm working on should be,
Yeah,
not at my favorite.
that makes sense. So as soon as you come out with one, are you just like, okay, next one, I have to start working on it, or do you give yourself a pause?
A little pause. I clean my studio. Sometimes it takes a while to pivot back into work, but not very long, because I really feel better when I'm working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. It's so cool. Let's shift gears a little bit. So you have 3 grown children. You are about to become a grandma, which is, it's incredible. I mean, and it's amazing. So I have a couple of questions. I shared with you, like, the median age on this show of children, of people that I interview, somewhere between like 7 and like 14. So I don't get a lot of moms who have older children, and I definitely don't get a lot of moms who are about to become grandmas. One of my greatest fears in life is that I will raise my daughter to be fiercely independent and wonderful, and she'll leave me in the dust. But it's also my fear in life that I will not raise her that way. And that's all I want for her, right? Is I want her to be this kick-ass little lady. So, I mean, how did you ensure, because you speak about your sons in such a great way, they're so special, they're such wonderful boys. What was your methodology? Like, how did you encourage them to just become these great men? And I know it's a very tough question, and that's probably like, we don't have an hour, so pick a few choices.
I kind of realized when they were little that I had this sort of feeling about keeping their world really small as long as I could, and expanding it only when it was necessary to do so. And like, I feel like one of the things I sort of railed against as a parent of young children was this sort of adult feeling like they need big parties and big experiences, and that's really important. And actually they don't. Like, I don't feel like they do. I feel like, let's say a birthday party with one friend or two is like, when they're 2 or 3 years old, is pretty special, and it's like the right size. And then you sort of expand out as they get older and they're ready for it. And I think one of the reasons I feel that way is because when I was little, and my feelings about, my memories about being a child that age are very strong still. Like, it's one of the reasons I think I work on behalf of that age group. Like,
you're very connected to it.
That's my demographic, and I get that age because I remember it from myself. And I remember how I was sort of so nervous about things that got too big for me, and so timid about things that I wasn't ready to do, that I was sort of being pushed to do. And so I really tried to resist that for them, like, as long as possible. And then when it was time, they would sort of let me know that, they had outgrown whatever it was, and it was time to kind of get. And I feel like that was something that guided me a lot through their childhood. It was important for me to kind of protect them in that way as long as possible.
And you kind of met them where they are. I think that's really important, and I think that's a good lesson, right? It's good advice. When people ask for advice, you can give advice. You're expanding with them. You're going with them instead of pushing the baby bird out of the nest, and that probably gave them a great deal of comfort to become their own people because you were with them.
I mean, I hope so. I feel like there were times that, I was told that I was maybe too protective for too long or things like that. But I mean, I feel like as they grew up, they have been very, willing to do new things. I mean, it's not like it's held them back in any way. As they've gotten older, it's me that has to like, oh, you're going to, spend months doing this in a different country. Oh, okay. They've had adventures, they do things. And so I don't know. I feel like that was something that I just remember from what I sometimes wished for myself. And
when you sometimes I think you parent, in spite of how you were raised and because of how you were raised. And that's,
right.
It's totally the truth. And what about the grandbaby? So now we're moving to grandma territory. Are you
excited?
You literally shake and freak out. You're going to be a grandma. So when is this happening? When's the blessed event?
After the first of the year, so somewhere around January-ish, maybe. Who knows? But that's the plan. And
that's the plan, of course.
My son and his wife they're very excited, and I'm so happy for them. Yeah. And it's going to be such a delight to see them raise a baby and just to be part of that in whatever way I'm allowed to be. But I'm just thrilled. It's just an amazing, and especially after this year. I mean, this year, oh my God. Kicked us all to the curb. I just
everybody. Oh my God.
It doesn't matter what your situation is.
You're exhausted. No matter what side, no matter what your situation, you're exhausted. You're fighting a losing battle in every way, shape, and form every day right now.
Right.
It's exhausting, totally. So a grandbaby will bring a lot of happiness, a lot of new joy. And how great the very beginning of 2021, right? In theory, we're all saying, let's just get rid of 2020.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. It just feels like something and especially now as we're looking at the holidays and everybody's like, well, what is that even going to be? Like, whatever, just to have something beyond that.
Yeah.
So important. And, I've been pretty much taking a lot of care of my elderly parents, and that's a hard place for them to be this year. Like,
sure. Well, it's such a dangerous space for elderly people to live in right now.
And so, I haven't been sort of thinking of a little, it just was such a great surprise, the idea that this baby was coming into our lives. It's just wonderful.
Cool. Yeah, congratulations. That's amazing. And that'll be 2021. And we're so thankful because our baby was 2019. So there's no 2020 baby between the two of us. And that's great. Okay, we're going to start to wrap up. I have two final questions for you. We sort of touched on this one before, and I love your answer. So you can do whatever answer you want, but I love it. So what is something, maybe as a parent when you have younger children or as you're going into becoming a grandma for the first time that you feel like you totally can't live without?
Okay, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to take this question and sort of, okay, so
do it.
One of the most important things that we had in our house, because the boys' dad and I were both artists, and we always had a lot of paper, a lot of blank paper and things to draw with. And when we were having any kind of conversation at our dinner table, for instance, and anybody had anything to say that was sort of like you're not being understood, the paper would come out and it'd be like, wait, and then there would be drawing that would happen that would articulate whatever it was, like maybe somebody saw something and they wanted to describe it, or something was really cool, or they had a neat idea. And so the paper being available was so important to us as a family. And still, when I'm with my boys, like I will see them still do this. It's like they just communicate that way.
Are they also artistic?
My oldest son is a typeface designer, so yes, he's a. And then my middle son works in stained glass. He kind of works at a big studio that does stained glass, like a huge, like family-owned big business. But he also does some painting on his own and designs, and so yes, he is too. And my youngest son is an academic. He's history. He's getting his PhD in history.
Very good.
So, and he's like, oh, I'm not really an artist, but he kind of is. He can communicate that way, and he is, you know, anyway. So they're all doing their thing, but that is one thing that I think is really important. It's important for my childhood too. I always had stuff to draw on. It doesn't have to be special. It doesn't have to be, you know, fancy. In fact, it's better if it's not. Expendable and available is really important. So, you know, I think my mom was a school teacher, and so she would have these stacks of newsprint that was just like, wads of it is the best way to do it. Like any kind of like, just a lot of cheap paper that you can just
scribble. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
So that's sort of a melding of the answers.
I love it. It's a good answer. It's a great answer. I've never heard of a family communicating through drawing. That's very, very cool.
Yeah,
okay, my last and final question. And now becoming a grandma, this question's even like twofold, right? What is something you know now that you wish you knew before becoming a mom?
You know, because I'm a little bit of a rule breaker, I'm going to switch the wording on this a little bit. And say something I'm glad I didn't know before I became a mom.
Okay. I love it. Do it.
And it's about this year. I am glad for me that I didn't have a year like this before becoming a mom, or while I was a mom of a young child. When I was a mom, I felt, you know, because I'm a boomer. My millennials tell me all the time. My millennial son's like, yeah, okay, boomer. But I am, and it was a hopeful time to sort of, for me when I was being raised and also had young kids, and this year has knocked us down too. I mean, psychologically, emotionally, in every way, we are knocked flat. And one of the things that I think we still have an obligation to do is to remain as hopeful as possible and put that hope into action, you know, for our kids, basically. Absolutely. And I say that, you know, for myself too, because not only that, like I'm making books for very new humans. Like they're just new. They're just barely here.
Absolutely.
And I want them to feel all the kind of love and joy and hope that they can about our world. And so I guess that's how I wanted to answer that question. It's a little of a turnaround, but
answer. It's a good answer. But even so, on the flip side of that, like we're at a good spot to have a baby, right? Because nothing's really different for us this year. I really feel bad for people who have a kid who's maybe like 4, 5, 6, because they're looking around and saying, what's happening? You know, even for your son, he's going to have a tiny little baby and not much is going to be different. You're not really going out. You're not really doing much. Like the world doesn't change. But from a hope standpoint, you're right. You know, we have to instill that hope as parents. We have a 1-year-old. We can't let the world go to shit.
Right.
We can't. You know, so I appreciate you changing the answer, and I take it and I love it. I think it's great.
Okay.
I think it's terrific. Well, Marla, thank you so much for coming. Where can people buy your beautiful, beautiful books, aside from every bookstore in the world, but where are you most accessible?
Well, any kind of independent bookshop, if you're lucky enough to have one in your town, is the best place right now. They're all hurting. And so supporting our independent booksellers should be everybody's goal. Any kind of community store that we can support, especially around the holidays. So I would encourage anybody to go to their local independent and order. Any of my books could be ordered if they're not there on the shelf. And I also, I will sign books from 2 of my local independent bookstores. So if anybody wants a signed copy, if they want to order it from either Vromans in Pasadena, it's Vromans. It's a really old bookstore. It's been there since before the turn of the century. Or Once Upon a Time bookstore, which is in a town called Montrose, and it's Montrose, California. And those 2 bookstores are, set up for me to go in. I'll sign books, personalize them to anybody's kid, draw a picture, and then they'll ship them anywhere.
Cool. So I'll tag both of those bookshops out so people can find them really, really easily.
That would be great. Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. And there's no better holiday gift than a book. Right? There's no better gift you can give to your kids than the gift of reading and learning and loving. And so please, 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 please go out and get some of Marla's books, because they're beautiful and they are so hopeful and wonderful. And Marla, thank you again for being here. And thank you all out there for watching. We really appreciate it. Have a great night.